On Face to Face this week, reporter Jackie Beecham speaks with Hilary Milgrom, a group facilitator and psychotherapist who leads groups for mature women in Jerusalem. The interview was conducted on a weekday.
I'm a group leader and psychotherapist, and I'm based in the Counseling Center for Women. I think that your listeners would be very interested in hearing what this center is. It's a non-profit organization based in Jerusalem and also in Ramat Gan, Ashkelon, and a few other places. And this center provides individual, couple, and group therapy for women and their partners. And these groups that I'd like to tell you about are connected with the expertise in women's psychology that our staff have developed over 30 years. So I think that the listeners would be interested in knowing that it's a non-profit organization that gives therapy on a sliding scale.
And these women are all in their 50s and 60s, right?
That's right. These are groups for women. It started off at midlife, and now I call it midlife and beyond, because I saw that women in their 50s and 60s are really interested in taking this opportunity when they're really in the post-menopause stage. And many of them are making changes, taking this opportunity to use a group to be able to make new decisions of what they want to do with the rest of their lives at this point.
What kind of approach do you use?
I use a lot of the most useful ideas from women's psychology and from the field of narrative therapy. And I try to give opportunities to the women to bring both their strong sides and their struggles to the group. And it's fascinating to see some of the transitions that occur between vulnerability and strength. For example, some women come into the group shyer or having been through different traumatic situations, less sure of themselves and so on. And several of these women gain strength from their meetings with the other women and from the approaches that we use and become clearer and more assertive in their lives. Others have been tough survivors also of difficult situations, but they've had to squash their feelings, and they often don't know how to get close to people or haven't felt comfortable with women, and some of these are able to open up to their emotional vulnerability during the group process.
When you talk about the narrative approach, what do you mean? Is it like visualizations or telling stories? What is it?
It's much more than both of those. It's a fascinating approach that listeners are invited to look up. But I can give an example of one of the techniques from narrative therapy that has been so helpful in the groups, and that is a witnessing process that enables women, after they've heard one woman sharing an issue that she's dealing with, rather than just the usual responses in a group where they may, give advice or try to give interpretations or just take it in many directions. The witnessing process asks very, very specific questions that help to create a very respectful atmosphere in the group. For example, one of the questions that I like so much from the witnessing process is, what do you sense that this woman holds precious in life based on the story that she's just been telling? So the women are listening out for the hidden strengths of the others, or small ways that women who feel maybe that their lives are deeply filled with problems are able to have already been making certain steps, and the group helps them to enlarge on those steps and to feel more sure of themselves.
Can you give me an example of any woman that's been in your group that's particularly been helped by the type of things you do? An interesting example.
Well, I've been given permission to share this story. There was a divorced woman in one of the groups who had been working in a particularly fascinating job for years. And she told us about her anxiety that within a few months, she and a few of her colleagues would be sent out to early retirement. Now, this was a woman who had had quite a lot of losses during her life, but she always had had something to hold on for, like her husband, the children, her work. Then her husband left, the children moved abroad, and now the thought of leaving her work just felt very, very hard for her. And she hadn't ever wanted to burden others outside the group, but something in the group process enabled something to open up with her. And she shared with us in the session after we had talked with her about her issue. She said, I felt safe enough in the group to admit that I'm dead scared. I'd felt paralyzed for months, then after the meeting, it was strange. I was able to let go of most of the fear, and I could suddenly start dealing with the issue on a more practical level.
And there are other issues, of course, in midlife or menopause, post-menopause, that women have to deal with, like empty nest syndrome, maybe, and being widowed or divorced, or many, many changes at that point.
That's right. It's one of the reasons that these groups focus on women, though, of course, this work I would like in the future to do also with men, but it's been very important for women to have a safe space to discuss women's issues. We look at the issues within our own group that people are dealing with, but we also look out at the larger world and see through literature and other writings about women, midlife, and aging. And you mentioned some of the important issues that women need to talk about. It could be bodily changes after menopause, and in fact, half the women in our group are often living alone, whether it's because they're divorced, widowed, or a few have never been married, and the others are married. And something that's very, very interesting when I was talking about vulnerability and strength is that sometimes when we talk about the subject of loneliness and solitude, solitude being the positive aspect of loneliness, there's some kind of a role reversal that occurs where the single women are able to share their coping strengths and survival mechanisms that they've been using for a long time, whereas the married women in the group are able to share that some of their biggest fears of aging are of being left alone.
Hilary Milgrom, and more information on the next group of sessions can be obtained by emailing HILARYMI, Hilary, M-I, @gmail.com.